Coming to you from the Tar Heel State, this is the Carolina Commercial Real Estate Connection, bringing you industry insights and hot takes from Carolina real estate experts, helping you begin, grow, and scale your commercial real estate portfolio. And now your hosts, Tony Johnson and Cameron Pearson.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Carolina Commercial Real Estate Connection. Today we have John and Sarah Starling joining us to discuss 1031 exchanges. So John and Sarah, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for having us on.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for coming on today. And could you guys give us a quick background on yourself and how you got involved in 1031s and, the two of you as a duo, explain your relationship together, I guess.
Well, thank you very much.
Who you are.
Yeah. So Sarah is my daughter, and we've been working together now for
13 years, 14 years. I can't keep count.
a good time. Obviously, I've been blessed to have one of my close family members involved with our business and our succession plan. I've been involved in real estate for almost 50 years. What is that? A half of a century, right? Although I only look 39, I'm really way on up there.
Yeah, I get mistaken. People often call me John's wife because he looks so young.
I have
So
to tell you,
it's
John,
funny.
Well, no, you just got into real estate 2 years old. We understand. You understand 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 74, I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill and started a real estate brokerage outfit in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And then we grew that for a number of years into 4 locations along the eastern seaboard of North Carolina. And then we moved to Wilmington and started into the development business. And we had developed about 8 subdivisions and built a lot of single families, built some oceanfront condominiums, and retired from all of that in the 80s, and then back into real estate in the form of running a real estate law practice here in Wilmington for about 18 years, retired from that. And for the last 7 years, we've been exclusively 1031 exchange, but we've been doing 1031 exchanges for clients through the law practice since 2003. Yeah, 2003. So we've done thousands of 1031 exchanges. We got into it in a great way, Tony. The best way, I think, is we sold a parcel of real estate, and we were going to have to pay a lot of tax, because when you sell investment property, you don't get an exclusion like you do when you sell your primary residence. You have to pay the tax on the profit. And if you've owned the real estate for a long period of time, you've depreciated that property over the course of the years, taking your tax depreciation benefits. And so your basis in the property is, over the course of time that you've owned it, has been diminished. And when you sell it, you have to pay tax on the difference between your adjusted basis and the sales price minus the cost of sale, like the commission and the transfer tax and the attorney's fee. So the tax can be really, really large. The tax on the sale of property is like 15% federal capital gains rate, right?
But you got other tax. You got state tax, depreciation recapture, and another net investment income tax. That's another federal tax on tax. So it ends up being double that. It's more like 30%. People think it's 15, but it's 30.
It's 30% of your profit you have to pay. And that could be 35 depending on your tax bracket. If you're in the highest tax bracket, then you have to pay 20% instead of 15 in capital gains tax. And if you've owned it a long time, then you got a lot of depreciation, right, Sarah?
Yes. Or if you're in California, I think it's like crazy high. What is it, like 40?
Yeah, it's more than 40. It's like 45%, 43 to 45% of your profits. So people don't want to pay the tax. And I didn't want to pay the tax when in 2003, when we sold an office building. And I said, how can I avoid the tax? Because I didn't know. I just was going to pay the tax. And thank goodness I had a CPA that knew a little something. And he said, well, you can do a 1031 exchange. And I said, what's that? Right.
Yes.
Now, I'm in my mid 40s and I didn't know what it was. So you can imagine the number of people that are going, I didn't know I could avoid paying the tax if I'm buying replacement property. So that's the whole key of 1031 is how can I avoid paying a huge chunk of my profit out, and how can I grow my wealth faster, right?
Yep.
So when we saw that, we thought it was so cool that we decided, well, we need to offer this service to other people. So we incorporated that in this Eugene Davis law firm. And we offered that to investor clients for a number of years. And then when I retired, I decided I needed something to do, right? So I took 1031 with me, and Sarah and I were just gonna.
Yeah, he thought he was gonna go, just move along with it, but he can't help but make a running company. So
Yeah,
we've got like 7 ladies working for us, and we're busy. He's busier than he's ever been with it. So
Sarah, let's get you and how you came involved into this. So now understanding John's background with the brokerage, with development, in doing the law practice to the 1031 exchange. So walk us, how did you get involved and what brought you into the business with him?
Yeah, so I got out of college and didn't know what I was going to do with myself. So I got my real estate license because my family, that's what, we're in the real estate business. So I worked as a real estate agent right out of college. I went to work for Tim Milam at Caldwell for several years. And I thought I was a real good real estate agent because it was like in 2005 when the market was so hot, and wrote it up and then wrote it down, the market. So did that, loved that. And I worked at Caldwell for a while and then went to Bryant Real Estate and worked there. And then Dad was retiring out of the law practice and needed some help. So he invited me to come along, and how could I turn that down, So that's my background, real estate, brokerage, selling, and then moving right into the 1031 exchange after a few years. And we also have a little title insurance company. So, we're all in real estate.
I would think this would be a little more hands-on to real estate agent in your car doing those things. This is one way to control your time.
What's that?
Oh, with the going from real estate to the 1031, I would think this would be a way to be a little less hands-on than, having to put people in your car and showing them houses, doing those things. Kind of gives you more freedom.
And it's nice because we're the only 1031 exchange local to North Carolina. So it's a unique niche for us because we're it. We've got investors title, but they're more national. I mean, we do them all over the country, but we're the only North Carolina based 1031 firm here. So it's nice.
Yeah, so that is great. I didn't realize you were the only one in the state, but that's great. And I think it's a great service, especially in an environment like this, where everyone that has been selling for the past few years has so much as far as profit goes, which is great. But then replacing that capital and understanding the 1031 exchange is difficult, John. Just like you stated, you didn't even get into your 40s. It's a little complicated and overwhelming for some, and if they're not, a full-time investor doing this every day, they're just not familiar with all the concepts, right? And I think that when you get into this property, and if you're dealing with a CPA and you're holding for that property for a while, the first thing that you're wanting to do is, if it's a bigger commercial property that you're going to hold on to a while, your CPA might say, okay, let's do a cost segregation and fully depreciate this building, which then exposes you to that high tax rate. that we're discussing. So, you know, when you do that, can you kind of walk someone through the steps of, they come to you, they have a building that they've owned for 15 years, it's fully depreciated, and what do you tell them? What are the steps and what do they need to know? Can you walk us through that understanding that someone might run into when they come to you?
Yeah, so we get a seller coming to us that's generally they've already have their property under contract by that point, and they've been sent to us by either their real estate agent or their real estate attorney and told, hey, you need
CPA.
to, or their CPA, and they've been told, hey, you're going to pay 30% in your profit if you don't do a 1031, and so they're real eager to learn about the process. So what do? We try to go through a quick sketch of what their tax liability will be, so we can kind of figure that out based on how long they've owned it, how long they've been depreciating it, what they paid for, what they're selling for. And generally that's a big number, especially since 2019, 2020. If they bought before then, they generally have doubled in value, because just of the function of how the market has been running. And when you get into those numbers and you take 30% in tax, then generally they're highly motivated to do a 1031 exchange at that point, because nobody wants to pay tax. So once we go through that with the people, and we go through the rules. So the rules are to not pay the tax on the 30% profit. You got to buy a property that's equal to or greater in value than what you sell, minus cost of sale. So that would be your real estate commission, your attorney fee, our fee, transfer taxes. Then you have to use all the cash from the sale. As long as you're doing those two things and you're buying investment property, then you're golden. You won't owe the tax.
With the investment property piece, does it have to be exactly the same type of investment, or is just as long as it's qualified as an investment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So people often think, because it's called 1031 like kind exchanges, that if you sell a condo, you have to buy a condo. Or if you sell a commercial piece of property, you have to buy a commercial piece. And any kind of investment property will do, right? So if you sell a residence and you want to buy a commercial property because you don't want the headache of unclogging toilets in the middle of the night, then you can do that. So as long as it's just investment for investment, so you could sell a commercial piece, buy some land, and as long as you're holding it for long-term investment, you're good.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, just to circle into a couple things, that's has a lot of advantages. So someone might say, well, I do this with a 1031, I then limit my ability to extract some of that capital that I earned. So, you need to be able to look at it in a few ways of taking that, they close on it, then they can pull the cash back out of the new property tax-free.
Yes.
That's the way to then take that gain and take the money out where you're still not having to pay taxes. So a couple of things I wanted to touch on. So when we're doing this transaction and we move over, and we're in large commercial properties, a lot of times you're going to be involved either as a syndication model, or you're going to have a joint venture model where there are entities that have different interests. So you might have half of the people that are in a joint venture, for instance, that don't want to invest in this future property. They might just want their money and pay the taxes to get out. So when that circumstance happens, how do you recommend, and what happens in that circumstance? Could you run people through that?
Well, yeah, I'll take that one, Sarah. So, when you're in a joint venture situation where you've got multiple partners, generally you're in an LLC. And when there are multiple partners in the LLC, you've got a problem. The problem is that the same taxpayer that sells the relinquished property has to buy the replacement property. So either everybody has to be in, or everybody has to be out. So you're either going to all pay the tax, or you're all going to go back into another investment together. And a lot of times interests have changed. You know, when you kind of getting into a joint venture is like getting into a marriage, right? If you're not together all the time, you can grow apart. And that's what normally happens in joint ventures. People's interests diverge. And after a few years, you know, one of the partners is interested in cashing out because they need the money for
Kids college.
Kids college,
Yeah.
or another investor is like, look, I want to be heavy industrial, I want to be commercial. Another investor is going, hey, look, I want to take advantage of beach properties and I want to go more residential. And I mean, you find the gamut there, right? So how do you get out? Well, we have what we call a partnership redemption exchange, and we also have what we call a partnership division exchange. So the redemption is like, okay, I'm going to redeem you guys out of this LLC, and I'm going to take the LLC and I'm going to move forward. And the partnership division LLC is where everybody wants to still 1031 exchange because nobody wants to pay the tax. So now we have to create spin-off LLCs so that there are the same taxpayer buying the replacement property, but the different partners would own different percentages of these spin-off LLCs. As an example, Sarah and I want to sell a property, but I want to buy commercial and she wants to buy beach cottage. So she forms a new LLC where the entity, the LLC, forms a new spinoff LLC, a new co. So then the new co is owned 2% by me and 98% by Sarah. And the old co gets redivided so that I own 98% of it and Sarah owns 2%. Now there's continuing interest. And so the new co goes out and buys property for Sarah and the old co goes out and buys property for me. We still have to file the tax return together for 2 years. And then at the end of 2 years, those two LLCs can break apart completely and I can give Sarah my 2% interest in the new co, and Sarah can give me her 2% interest in the old co, and we're completely done. But you see, that's a step transaction, and it involves a lot of attorney work and a lot of paperwork. So it's, of course, much more expensive than a standard exchange is. Same thing when you do cash outs, when you do partnership redemption exchanges, when one party wants to cash out or several parties want to cash out, then we have to get the QI involved in a QI note situation where the QI borrows money from the exchange or from the LLC that owns the relinquished property, borrows it out of the exchange proceeds, and then lends it to the cashing out partners, such that the cashing out partners will end up buying a note from the old LLC, and the note has 2 installment payments. One becomes the first installment payment is within a few days after the closing of the relinquished property, and the second installment payment has to be at the beginning of the following year after the closing of the relinquished property, so that you can take installment sale treatment on it to legitimize it as a valid exchange. And that way the cash out partners can get all of their money. They can get like 95% of their money immediately after the closing, a few days after the closing, and then the other 5%, their residual, at the beginning of the following tax year. So that's the way a redemption exchange works. I've probably given you a lot more information than you wanted. I'm sorry.
No, that's actually perfect. That lets us know that they need to come see you to figure that out, because there's no, it really is. That's an experience thing. And I would think it would be almost impossible to replicate without going through it several times like you have.
Now, here's the easy way
Yeah,
to
the
do it.
easy way.
The easy way to do it is in advance of you contemplating sale.
When is that? When is in advance of contemplation of sale?
Well, see, that's a great question, because who knows? But if you had the foresight in advance of contemplation of sale, and this is IRS language,
yeah,
to distribute the assets of the LLC to the individuals, so that each of the individual members then are tenants in common in the property, then each tenant in common can decide how they want to go, and they can have a valid exchange, each person, but you have to bust out of the LLC process. And so much, 99% of the time, we don't have that luxury to tell them, okay, you're thinking about selling next year. What we have is a situation where they say, hey, we're closing in 30 days.
yeah. We probably had five clients over the many years we've been doing exchanges that we've been able to, that have contacted us prior to contract or prior to listing.
Yeah, the most common thing that I hear is, yes, switch the LLC to tenants in common, and that's the way to exit. But exactly what you're saying, that is just not practical, because typically, somebody could come, you don't even have it listed. Somebody comes, a lot of these things, you just have an interested buyer. He comes, gives you a good deal, you're ready to sell. You had no foresight on that. They made you a great offer, you're ready to sell. So all of a sudden, you want to go identify a property, which you have a time constraint on that, which I'd like to get into. But then, you don't have time for the tenants in common. So just to circle back and clarify the tenants in common, how much time do you guys need for someone to be able to get into that process, tenants in common? What do you typically see?
So they need to do it before they list. The best situation is when you buy the property, don't do a partnership LLC. Go ahead and form 2 LLCs to buy the property to begin with.
If you want LLC protection, you could have all the partners form their own single member LLCs, and all the LLCs own the property as tenants in common.
Yeah, that way you're not having to, bust it
later on. But the problem is that the banks don't like that. They don't like to be lending to more than one, because it creates more paperwork for them, and you know how that is.
I think that it also, for lending, they wouldn't want to, that's going to make that a lot more difficult. So I think that hampers that a bit. But to go back on the redemption exchange, when you were going through that, I know you were just saying it, QI. For those who don't know what that means, could you go in and explain that a little bit for the listeners?
That's qualified intermediary. Yeah, that's kind of, we have so many acronyms and we forget. I think all different industries have the acronyms, and we forget that people don't know that. So it's just qualified intermediary. That's what we do in the 1031 exchange piece, is act as your qualified intermediary to make the exchange happen.
Yeah, so just basically remember that 1031, the code 1031 says if you exchange your property, you don't have to pay tax. Well, if you sell to one person and you buy from another, how is that an exchange?
Yeah.
How is that an exchange? That's a sale and a purchase. So if you sell, you got to pay tax. There's no way around that. If you exchange, then that means you sell to some person and you buy from that person. Okay, that's like finding the needle in a haystack, right? That you want to sell, you want to sell your property, and the person wants to buy your property, and they have a property that you want to buy. Needle in a haystack. So now the IRS said, okay, well, if you legitimately hire a qualified intermediary or someone to be the person that you swap with, then we will allow you not to have to pay the tax. And they created these safe harbor rules and regulations around that. This has evolved over 100 years. Remember, the tax code is only 103 years old. They started collecting tax in 1919. There was no federal tax and no state tax prior to 1919. Can you guys believe that?
I wish we could go back to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 1921, legislation was introduced to allow exchanges not to have to pay tax under the premise of if you exchange, you're helping build the economy because you're buying and you're selling, and you're not, you won't have any money to pay the tax because you're putting all the money back into the new property. So it's not fair, and it stimulates the economy. So they, Congress had a lot of sense back then.
I picked up on what you put down there.
Right. They had a lot more sense back then. So this, going back, so what you guys are doing, this is one of the biggest benefits to real estate investing, is having the opportunity to defer this tax. This is how you can make real money in real estate and not pay tax. So there's a couple things that I think we should touch on. One, when you're doing a 1031, I would like to, if you guys could go through the timing of when they found that property, how quickly they need to identify a property, a time frame on that so people can understand it. So we'll start with that, and then I've got another question.
Yeah, so you got two drop dead dates when you're doing a 1031 exchange. You've got 45 days to identify your replacement property or properties, and you've got 6 months to close on those properties. So, and those 2 dates start ticking on the date of the relinquished property closing. 45 to ID, 6 months to close.
Basically.
Yes. Yeah, and the IRS just wants you to identify, right? We're gonna fill out an ID form for you, and you're gonna sign it on your 45th day. And that's all the IRS requires. But realistically, you need to have it under contract by then, and locked in, because you can't change the list once you're past your 45th day. So if you give me 3 properties that you're interested in on 45 days, on the 45th day, and you can't work those contracts out, and you call me and you're like, Sarah, I've lost all these contracts. You're out of luck, and you're going to pay the tax.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
45 is definitely the drop dead.
Yeah, and that's been the challenge for people for a few years, because our inventory has been so low. But people make it happen, and they find the replacement properties.
But I would think while they're
You're breaking it up a little bit. I'm sorry.
I just say.
Well, there we go. I can hear you now.
I couldn't understand you either, but I don't know. I think you were just talking another language. It was a secondary language. But that's okay. So let me ask you this to clarify something else. So we've got the property identified in 45 days. We close on the 1031 exchange. So there's a couple benefits. You can do this multiple times, right? So you take this property, you fully depreciate it, 1031 into another one. And another big advantage that I think I want to point out for the audience that's listening is, once, let's say that your father's done it, and we know that he's only 50, but let's say he gets to where he's on the 10th property or whatever, that he's 1031 exchange through, and he's, nearing retirement, and maybe is looking at, passing down what he's put together for you. So you would inherit what he's put together. Are there advantages for you that he's done all this work?
I like what you're getting at there. The idea that we like to say is you swap until you drop.
Until you drop. That's right.
Yeah. So you can continue to do exchanges all the way to the bitter end, and you just stay in real estate. And then once you pass, your heirs inherit that property or properties, if you just built up a portfolio at a stepped up basis. So dad dies, you turn around, put him in the ground, and then the next day you can sell, and you won't owe any tax on that money, because if it's valued at $2 million, then that's your basis when inherited. So that's another beautiful thing that has been set up, here in the United States, is you can pass on your, the real estate is like the sacred cow, because you can pass on your real estate to your heirs, and they inherit, that value and don't owe the tax. So it's a beautiful thing.
Just so people understand a little bit more clarity on that. So what we're saying is, so when you're buying these, you take a property, let's say you bought a $500,000 property. You took that property and you fully depreciated it to zero. So you're saving your taxes on your other, let's say you have a W-2 income, you're saving taxes every year as you're depreciating that $500,000 property that you purchased. And
Correct.
Once you've used all the depreciation on that property and you fully depreciated it, then you go and sell. You go through a 1031 exchange with Sarah and come to the next property that, let's say, is $1 million.
Correct.
Then you own that $1 million property. You fully depreciate that. Again, you're saving on taxes for the next consecutive years on owning that property, and depreciate it and decide to 1031 again. And this time we go.
Yeah, maybe you buy two this time, instead of one, because you've got this more, more profit there. Call that a twofer.
And you've then, let's say we've had the twofer and we're at the $2 million property and we fully depreciated that. And then, as you say, we dropped, and now we're swapping. We swapped because we dropped. So now, Sarah, you have inherited a $2 million piece of property that your father, John, fully depreciated. And again, what Sarah's saying is that you're getting it at the value of the $2 million, right? So can you go through that now? So we've walked up to it. And so what is the inherited person? How are they walking in? And can we go through that one more time just to be clear for people?
Yeah. So I would inherit that property, and its basis would be the value at that date. So it's instead of being zero, it's 2 million. And so I have no
profit.
profit.
Sell it for 2 million and I owe no taxes.
Correct.
So we've escaped somehow the tax man by doing this. So once we go through the process as an investor and do that lifetime worth of investing using this great 1031 that was created, and then we pass it on to our child, they get that property. They can then go sell it for full price, not worry about doing a 1031 at that point, and take all the money and pay no taxes. So you have, in essence, created generational wealth for your children. That is the greatest way to do it on this planet. And it's, the government has formed it that way to incentivize you investing in real estate and investing in the growth of the country and inheriting. And that is the best way to do it. And the government is, advertising to do it this way. And this is the way that you can really create wealth for you and your family. And so, what you guys are doing is an amazing service, and, creating more understanding and knowledge of this is how you really make money in real estate. It's not about a fix and flip and, doing a couple fixes and flips. This is a long game, real estate investing, and it's something that can create long-term wealth if you do it right, using stuff like this 1031 exchange that the government has and they're promoting. And it's just building that understanding.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell. It's not a quick game. It's been around for 100 years and people use it,
and finding knowledgeable partners like you who can walk people through this process over and over again. I mean, you guys have the ability to help build that generational wealth for client after client, which is awesome. Now, when you're doing this, I know we talked a bit about you have a title company as well, you said?
Yes, it's called Priority Title Insurance Agency, Inc. That's correct. And we sell.
That don't understand what that does or what's involved with that, could you kind of run us through that?
Sure. Yeah, we sell title insurance here in North Carolina, and of course, in North Carolina, you're not closing real estate. Some states title companies close, handle the closings. North Carolina is an attorney state, so you have a real estate attorney handling the closings, and then another title company providing the title insurance, which insures the title to your property in case there's issues with the title that people really don't think about. Undiscovered errors, or there's issues with title that come up often, and we help ensure that one of your biggest assets is protected.
So in North Carolina, as you said, we're an attorney state. In other states, you guys work with your title company in other states, I presume, right?
We're just strictly in North Carolina.
Okay, just in North Carolina. Okay. All right. So let's just stay with that. So you're doing a title search. And so what part of the process in purchasing the real estate, does someone contact you directly, or do you guys get contacted through a third party and just work directly with a third party for the owner?
Yeah.
So we in North Carolina, title insurance agencies and title insurance companies provide the title insurance, but the attorney does the closing and searches the title to make sure that all liens and encumbrances have been satisfied. Well, the problem with the attorney searching the public records is that sometimes clouds on title are not on the public record or cannot be discovered by the attorney. That's why all banks require that any borrower that's buying real estate must have title insurance, because there are title insurance claims that come up every day, thousands of them every day in the country. People that have gotten divorces that haven't gotten the spouses to sign off properly, other defects in title which require insurance. So the attorney that closes it will suggest a title company that he would like you to use to buy the title insurance from.
Or she.
He or she.
Attorney. Come on, John.
Yeah. Get with it, man. Okay, so
Sorry.
So the title, she keeps me young. She keeps me straight. Okay. Yeah. So the title insurance is a product of either the client having a favorite title insurance company that they want to use and telling the attorney, I would like my title insurance purchased through Priority Title, or the attorney will select a title insurance company that he likes to use to provide the title insurance for the client that's purchasing the property.
Yeah, and that's generally what happens. Most people don't think about title insurance when they're buying, because people are only generally buying a property or two, not that often. So it becomes a choice. It's required by law in North Carolina for the buyer to be allowed to choose their title insurance company, but realistically they just don't know.
They leave it up to their closing attorney to select it generally, unless they have a friend in the business. And of course, if we're doing a 1031 exchange for a client, we're asking that client to utilize Priority Title if they're not already locked in through some other source.
Yes.
And is there advantages or price regulations to where an attorney picking their favorite doesn't affect you?
No, yeah, and that's a good point. Title insurance premiums are regulated by the Department of Insurance of the state of North Carolina. So they set the rates and everybody has to abide by those same rates. So it's really it's just a matter of service and who you underwrite the title insurance with. Now, if you underwrite with a regional title insurance company, and that regional title insurance company goes broke, then there's a problem, right? So you really want your title insurance to be underwritten through one of the larger title insurance companies in the country. And we've got, there are several: Fidelity, Chicago Title,
First American.
These are your mammoth title insurance companies that are what they call too big to fail, right? So we underwrite for Fidelity and for First American, which are the two largest by far, and also with another more regional company called WFG. So we have 3 title insurance companies that we utilize to write our policies through, which are the top 3 in the nation. The 2, Fidelity is undisputed the largest title insurance company in the world, and First American tries to seesaw back and forth with them to take over that position.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So
We appreciate you giving us a little plug there for our title insurance agency.
yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, I appreciate it. So I want to give a plug for your 1031 exchange company as well. It's called National Realty Exchange Corporation. And again, you guys are out of Wilmington, North Carolina. And per what you're saying, you're the only one in the state of North Carolina. So definitely want to look you guys up. If someone wants to reach out to you for more information or to potentially do a 1031, what's the best way to contact you guys?
So you can call me or call John, or you can go to our website, which is nrx1031.com, which has all of our information on there. nrx1031.com.
NRX short for National Realty Exchange, and then 1031.com. So nrx1031.com. We're supposed to say that like 10 times, right?
Right.
Yes, say it as many times as possible. So we're NRX 1031 would be the best way to reach out to you. And then we'll put it in the show notes as well. And, do you guys do anything else? Are you on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, a way for somebody to reach out to you directly?
Oh yeah. I'm all linked up on social media. Dad, not so much. He's
John, I
on
know you're
LinkedIn.
linked up on
You can get him on
I've seen John all over social media.
He's on Instagram.
He's everywhere, this guy. Well, we sincerely appreciate you guys joining us today. And maybe we can have you on another time and hear a little bit more about your investment run that you made back in the earlier days. That sounded very interesting. I wanted to get to the 1031 today, but I'd really like to dive in a little bit on your investment experience and hear about that. I think that would be insightful. But we sincerely appreciate you guys coming on today.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. Great to see you.
Guys, have a
Cameron, you
great
as
day.
well. buddy.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
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 now.